Hey everyone, this is Mary White, and this is my final exam for EPSY 7210 Summer 2017. So, the first objective from this course that I think I really got a good grasp on this semester was recognize prejudice and oppressive institutional structures in education that marginalize gifted students from culturally diverse backgrounds, specifically race, class, gender, and language issues. I think that before this class, I was good at recognizing prejudice, and I think that particularly came through the student teaching that I've done in Clark County, where a lot of the students are in some way disadvantaged or minority, or just there are a lot of ways to see diversity in these schools. And so I think before this, I was really good at recognizing prejudice, I would have said, but not particularly in gifted students. It was something that I just have really never had a lot of experience in. So specifically in gifted programs, the minority students are often really impacted by the identification processes that occur to get these students into the programs. There can be biases in testing, whether these be biases to racially different students, to economically disadvantaged students who are already coming into school with these disadvantages, or otherwise. Fraser and Garcia speak on some of the best ways to change this, which are using multiple criteria and non-traditional measures. So basically, just not using those basic IQ tests that a lot of schools use for gifted testing, and not just using one way. So, some of those ways are to observe students in the classroom, to use their work samples, to use some kind of measure of creativity, or some even take outside input from teachers or principals, which I think really doesn't happen in a ton of schools, but that was one possibility that they said. Another aspect of that is that you have to be careful to still keep standards, because otherwise it's possible that some identifications can just become too loosely defined, and then either kids that should be getting into gifted aren't, or the standards are being lowered, or something along those lines. So you just have to be careful with that. Another issue that I think I learned a lot about over the course of this summer that falls under this objective is tracking. I really had newer thought about this, and obviously Wells and Zerna talk about detracking a lot. The issue that I thought was the most, the article that I thought was the most impactful to me was the Sapin Shevin article. I will admit, when I started reading that article, I thought she was a little bit crazy. And I kept on reading, and I was like, okay, this actually makes a lot of sense. And it's true. When you pull students for gifted, you do segregate the students. And I think it kind of is still up for interpretation of how beneficial that is, because I think there are some benefits to it. But at the same time, the biggest thing that stuck out to me was that the kids notice, because the kids absolutely do notice. The ones who are in the gifted programs feel ashamed sometimes. They want to hide it, or the kids that aren't in it are constantly wondering why they're not there, or what they did wrong, or why they're not good enough for those programs. And another thing that was impactful from that article to me was the issue of teachers having less autonomy, which is something that I think is a big problem today in a lot of other aspects too, but particularly there. So this was probably the biggest objective that I think I have gotten a good grasp on over this summer. The second objective is develop a plan to use multicultural approaches to address homeschool community relations that support gifted programs and empower students and their families. This was another big one for me, particularly student teaching in the kind of school that I'm at. I am all about empowering students and their families. So, the first way that I thought we can do this is just encouraging those courageous conversations with our students, with our families, and with other teachers in our school. The biggest thing to me is letting our students know that we love them, we value them, we care about them. How they are unique is important to us. And so I think when we start out the year with doing that, and we let our students know that they have a place in our classroom, they hopefully are more willing to share things about themselves. And along with that is just being able to create a classroom that engages and encourages diversity. So, homeschool community, particularly in the standard, parent involvement is what comes to mind for me, parent and family involvement. So, Ford spoke on the different types of parent involvement. Some of the ones that I thought were the most important were conferences, notes, and folders, were the ones that really stuck out to me, that I and my mentor teacher use a lot in our classrooms to connect with parents, and as well as phone calls. Just calling to let parents know, like, hey, maybe this is going on, wanted to check in with you, or hey, your kid just had a great day today. Another thing that I wrote on one of my papers, I believe it was home visits. I recently have heard a lot about this from other teachers, hadn't really known a lot about it before, but I think home visits is a great way to just connect with families, build relationships with them, and not going in saying, like, hey, I have all this knowledge, let me tell you what I know, but more along the lines of like, hey, I want to work with you. You know your kid better than I do. What can you tell me that will help me learn things about your kid and help us work together over the year to do what's best for them? So I think that is a key thing that I want to do as a teacher. Also, inviting parents into decisions is key. They need to feel like they have a say, and I think there's definitely a fine line on that in the schools because we are the teachers, we're the professionals, but at the same time, when parents feel wanted and validated in the classroom, they're more likely to want to participate more. So, in terms of change, growth, and reaffirmation over the summer, one of the biggest ones for me was culturally responsive teaching. I personally am big on differentiation. I think that every student is different. Obviously, I mean, we know that, but every student is different, and I'm all about finding different ways to reach these different students and using different teaching styles to meet different learning styles. That's a big thing for me, but I don't think I've ever really thought about modifying in terms of cultural knowledge and prior experience. That was really a new growth area for me this summer. Taking this class has really shown me that, and I think in particular, I've just been focusing on the fact that teachers can learn so much from students, and that's something that I knew before, but especially in this class, I've really gotten a real grasp on that. And obviously, as a teacher, I can't know every culture that steps into my classroom, but I can be willing to learn about them and learn from my students. And out of some particular strategies based on culturally responsive teaching, I thought some of the important ones were grouping students based on their interest and also allowing students to teach each other. Um, in one of my language classes recently, we were talking about if one student is better at English and one student is better at Spanish, for example. Create opportunities where the English student can help the Spanish student and create opportunities where the Spanish student can help the English student. So just making opportunities in the classroom for where every student can be the expert and every student can feel like they have something to contribute. Also using the students to teach things that I may not know as much about. And all these issues with culturally responsive teaching contribute to my future plans because I'm about to full-time student teach for my last semester of undergrad. And I've been thinking lately about some things that I want to do as a student teacher this semester. And I think this class has shown me that one of the biggest things I want to do this semester is just to make it one of my main goals to make sure that every single student feels validated. And that hopefully in response, they want to be open in the classroom to sharing. The second area of change, growth, and reaffirmation for me has just been the importance of teaching teachers. So, professional development in particular. Before I took this class, I knew little to nothing about multicultural gifted education. And I think it's just really, really shown me that there's always something that we don't know about. And there's always something that some other teacher is an expert on that you probably don't know about. So I've really been able to think about the importance of professional development and just being able to constantly learn in the class. We can always be teaching teachers how to do better, no matter how many years they've been teaching for. Another thing that this has done is just really reaffirm self-reflection for me. That is something that I have always thought is super important, but in particular, this has reaffirmed self-reflection for me based off of ourselves and also based off of other teachers watching us. That affects my future work because I want to make it more of a point, both in this semester with student teaching and in the future when I have my own classroom, to have other teachers observe me. I think that is just one of the best ways to improve. Also, I think videoing ourselves is great, but in particular, having another teacher watch you and have another perspective is so great because a lot of times we just don't realize the things that we're doing. We're so used to them that it doesn't even cross our minds. And so I think when we have another teacher watch us, that can be one of the best ways to improve. So, in networking, I think that educators obviously are the best resources for us, and this can take the form of groups or individuals. But my two personal resources were individuals because those are just the people that stick out to me. So, the first one is Rakita Craft. She's my mentor teacher. She's absolutely amazing. She has been such a great example for me for differentiating for every student based off of their individual needs. And she's really just shown me how to meet these needs and ensure that every student in the classroom feels like they have a place. So she is my number one go-to. If I ever need something, have questions, want somebody to observe me, she's the one that I go to. So I put her first. The second one is not quite so much of a mentor, but she is another teacher friend, and she's a middle school social studies teacher. So I student teach in kindergarten. She is in a completely different realm than I am, also in a completely different county. And so she came to my mind because she's somebody that I'd really love to talk to about what she feels like her personal work is. And I would just really be interested to hear about the diversity issues that she sees in her classroom and how she addresses them. I think it would be a really cool way to just get a new perspective on that. So I think overall, what I've gotten from this class is just that we as teachers never stop learning from our students and from each other. And I think that is just kind of the beauty of the job. And so that is my final exam.